It happened in the middle of a crowded high school hallway, beneath the harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look worse than it already was. Laughter echoed off the lockers as the new girl, Emma, sat trembling in a chair, her wrists tied with thick rope, sticky soda dripping from her hair down to her trembling hands. The smell of cola mixed with humiliation hung in the air. Her tears fell silently as students recorded her with their phones, some giggling, some whispering, and others pretending not to see. Standing before her, wearing a bright blue and yellow varsity jacket, was Ryan, the school's golden boy, captain of the basketball team, everyone's favorite. He tilted the empty Coke bottle with a grin that made Emma's stomach twist. She had arrived at Westbridge High barely 2 weeks ago. Now, she wished she never had. Broken heart, before we go on, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up for what's right, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories that touch the heart. Broken heart. Emma had transferred to Westbridge after her father passed away in a sudden accident. Her mother, desperate for a fresh start, had moved them across the state. Emma was quiet, shy, and lost in a sea of unfamiliar faces. She loved sketching, staying close to the library, and eating lunch alone under the old oak tree behind the gym. But that quietness, that fragile stillness she carried, made her stand out to Ryan and his group. To them, she was the perfect target. It started small. A cruel comment about her clothes. A laugh when she tripped. A whisper that spread lies about her past. She tried to ignore it, believing that if she stayed invisible, the storm would pass. But that day, in the hallway, invisibility was no longer an option. The humiliation didn't end with the soda. The videos spread through the school like wildfire. By lunchtime, Emma's name was trending on every student's feed. Coke girl. Crybaby. Drama queen. She couldn't walk down a hallway without hearing snickers or feeling the sting of whispered words behind her back. Teachers did nothing. Some said it was just kids being kids. Others didn't even notice. That night, Emma sat on her bed, staring at the cracked screen of her phone, replaying the video again and again. Each time, it cut a little deeper. She wanted to scream, to disappear, to somehow undo the moment when everything fell apart. But as her tears dried, something inside her hardened. She remembered her father's words he'd spoken on one of their last walks together: when people try to break you, don't let them define who you are. Rise higher than they can ever reach. That night, for the first time in weeks, she didn't cry herself to sleep. She opened her sketchbook and began to draw, not what had happened to her, but what she wanted to become. Strong. Unshakable. Unforgettable. The next morning, she returned to school. Head held high, hair tied back, wearing the same green sweater she'd worn the day of the bullying, a quiet defiance, a silent message that she wasn't ashamed. The whispers followed her, but she ignored them. Instead, she focused on something new, a project for the school's upcoming art exhibition. It was her chance to say what words couldn't. Day after day, she poured her pain into her work. Each brushstroke carried a memory, each color a fragment of her heart. Slowly, other students began to notice. One by one, people who had laughed at her started feeling the weight of guilt pressing on their chests. A week before the exhibition, Ryan's world began to crack. The school principal had received a call from the district office. A parent had reported the video. There was talk of suspension, maybe even expulsion. But what unsettled Ryan the most wasn't the threat of punishment, it was the way people began to look at him. The admiration was gone. The laughter had turned to disgust. Even his friends started to drift away. For the first time, he realized the power of the moment he thought was funny, how a few seconds of cruelty could destroy someone's peace, and now, his own. The night of the art show arrived. The gym was filled with parents, teachers, and students. Emma's display stood quietly in the center, a massive canvas painted in haunting shades of blue and gray. It showed a girl sitting in a chair, ropes around her body, soda dripping from her hair, but her eyes, instead of tears, were filled with fire. Behind her, faceless shadows with phones for heads surrounded her, recording her pain. Above them, in bold red letters, were the words, "I am not your entertainment." When the lights dimmed, Emma stepped forward to speak. Her voice shook, but her courage filled the room. She talked about bullying, about silence, about the unbearable loneliness that follows humiliation. She didn't mention names. She didn't need to. Every person who had laughed at her felt their chest tighten. Ryan stood in the crowd, hands trembling, his heart pounding in his throat. For the first time, he saw her not as the quiet new girl, but as someone far stronger than he could ever be. The gym erupted in applause when she finished. Not the shallow kind that comes from politeness, but the kind that comes from souls being moved. Emma smiled, her eyes glistening, not with tears of pain, but of release. Later that night, as the crowd dispersed, Ryan walked up to her. His voice broke when he tried to apologize. She looked at him for a long moment and said softly, "I forgive you, but I'll never forget." And she walked away, not out of weakness, but because she had already won. From that day forward, the school changed. Teachers began addressing bullying head-on. Students who had been silent found their voices. And Ryan? He spent his senior year trying to make amends, volunteering, speaking at assemblies, and standing up for the kids who couldn't. Sometimes, change begins not with perfection, but with regret strong enough to rebuild a person's soul. Months later, Emma's story spread beyond the school. Her painting was featured in a youth art magazine. Her message, "I am not your entertainment," became a symbol for anti-bullying campaigns in nearby schools. She had turned her pain into purpose, her humiliation into hope. And every time she passed that hallway, she didn't see a place of shame anymore. She saw where her strength had been born. Rose, if this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, not for the views, but to spread kindness, courage, and empathy in a world that needs it more than ever. Rose. Speech balloon. Before you go, comment below one thing you've learned from Emma's story, because sometimes, sharing your words can heal someone else's silence. Speech balloon.